Not everyone who's on a private jet is a celebrity. I know we hear the rappers and the ballers talking about PJ all the time. What's up, YouTubers? Thank you so much for tuning in. It's your girl, Marnaé Thompson-Haynes. Today, we're going to talk about commercial private. So in my previous two episodes, I talked about commercial regional and commercial mainline. And that is how to become a flight attendant, and just a glimpse into what it looks like in each of those sectors. So today's episode, we're going to talk about the commercial side, and that is the private side. How to become a flight attendant in the private sector. So it's very much like the other two sectors. You find the carrier that you're interested in, such as NetJets, Millionaire, etc. And you go to their website and apply and see if they're hiring. And if they're hiring, you submit your application and you go through the interview process, just like with any other job or with any other airline, and you get hired. But working for a private carrier is a little bit different than working for a regional or mainline carrier. So in this sector of private, you basically are on call. And I have talked to people who work directly for private carriers, and so I'm just relaying the information that they gave to me. I did do a lot of research too, and I tried to piece it all together to figure out, and what they told me was pretty much everything I found in my research. So basically, you're on call. In the previous two episodes, I talked about reserve. So when you're on reserve, you're available to the company. Now, it's not a 24-hour rolling clock. It used to be that way with some airlines, but it's not a 24-hour rolling clock. Basically, they say, hey, here are the hours in which you need to be available to me, just in case I need to call you to give you a trip. Anything you do outside of those hours, it's your business, your life. You're free to do whatever you want. So let's say your call window or your reserve window for that day is from 7 a.m. until 7 p.m. The company has the right to call you between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. to assign you a trip. Basically, to say, hey, Flight Attendant Jones, you're going somewhere today. Here's where you're going. That's basically what you're going to get at a private carrier as well. They don't have set schedules because they're not in the commercial world, right? They operate based on need, on demand. And so people who have memberships with private charter company or private, they're charter too, but private companies, they basically have an account, and they have this account set up to where they either pay monthly or it's a withdrawal when they book their flight, and they have between at bare minimum 24 to 48 hours to book their flights. They can book way in advance, but a lot of important people don't always have that luxury of booking way in advance. So they, a lot of politicians and things like that, they have to go back and forth places and meetings that pop up on their schedules within 24 to 48 hours. So they have this bare minimum window of 24 to 48 hours, just so the company can notify a flight crew, meaning pilot and flight attendant, pilots and flight attendant, or sometimes two flight attendants, but typically there's one on a private plane, to work the flight and to give them their schedule. So you have that call window, and the company calls you and it says, hey, we have celebrity X coming, and they're doing Chicago to Las Vegas, and you're going to lay over with that airplane and stay in Vegas the entire 4 days that celebrity X is there, and you and the crew will bring that airplane back or take celebrity X then from Vegas to LA or whatever the case. So that's basically kind of what it looks like when you work for a private carrier. It's not you get this schedule like you do over in the commercial sector, where the trip is planned out, exactly where you're going, where you're landing, what time you're starting, what time you're getting done. In the private sector, it's a little bit different, to where when they call you, you'll have an itinerary, but that itinerary can change based on the need and the demand of the passenger that you're flying. Keep in mind, not everyone who's on a private jet is a celebrity. I know we hear the rappers and the ballers talking about on the PJ all the time, right? Which they are. A lot of them do fly private. A lot of them fly commercial too, coach class, because I didn't see y'all. So it's not always the ballers and things like that are on those airplanes. A lot of the times they're business people, really, really important, very wealthy, could probably buy a couple celebrities, wealthy people on these private jets. These people are movers and shakers. They are going and coming globally, making deals, shaking hands, kissing babies, a lot of politicians, but mostly really like high stature business people fly private for the most part. So, if you doing it for the gram, which is fine, I ain't judging, but if you're doing it for the gram and, you want to meet a lot of celebrities and that's why you are going into private, don't be surprised if you can't fill your entire Instagram feed with all of these celebrities that you met. And a lot of these men and women, the business, men and women like to fly private just because commercial can be such a bear. You've got TSA and like security and long lines and they literally sometimes walk out of one meeting in Washington, D.C. and they need to be in New York in less than an hour for another meeting. And so if they're driving to a commercial airport, going through security, got to wait in line and all that stuff, they're not going to make their meetings. So a lot of times they opt for private for that reason, because of the convenience. And keep in mind, there are security measures over in the private sector, but TSA is strictly for like commercial general passenger travel. You don't have to go through all of that when you're flying private. So a lot of these people are like, I ain't got time for all that. I need to get to where I'm going and whatever. As it pertains to benefits, a private carrier will offer some form of benefits, whether that be medical or dental. When it comes to flight benefits, you do not have flight benefits such as, jump seating and buddy passes and things like that, because they're a small private carrier and their planes are strictly used for revenue, not for just leisure travel with their employees. So if you do want a flight attendant career that offers you flight benefits for you and your family, and you can extend it to your friends and things like that, then private won't be for you, because they do have to pay for their travel. The only time a private flight attendant gets to travel on a mainline carrier or regional carrier without, with the company paying for it is when the company pays for it, because they're repositioning them. So like, for instance, I've had several, but for instance, this one, I had a flight attendant who was in Fort Myers, Florida, and she was flying on us back to Chicago. And she was in full flight attendant uniform, not our uniform, but in a flight attendant uniform. And she had her wings on and everything. And I said, oh, where are you going? And she's like, oh, I'm going to Chicago, and we're going to lay over in Chicago. And then I'm going to pick up my next crew and passenger. They're going from Chicago to wherever. And I was like, oh, okay, well, why didn't you guys just fly there? And I didn't know she worked for private at the time. And I was like, why didn't you guys just fly from Fort Myers to Chicago? And she's like, well, that plane is going on to somewhere else. I work for a private carrier, and that airplane is taking somebody from Fort Myers somewhere else, but the crew, meaning her, had to be repositioned to get to Chicago to pick up another airplane, to pick up another set of passengers for the next calendar day. And so in that instance, the company will pay for, that's called deadheading or TDYing. The company will pay, like the private carriers will buy a ticket on a carrier to get you to where you need to be or whatever city you need to be in, so that you can work whatever trip they assigned you. And of course, that's to no penalty to you. That's just part of, what they do. But as far as just, showing up to the airport, getting on the standby list, giving your friends some buddy passes and things like that, you won't get that at a private carrier. So if that's what you're looking for, then you might want to consider the commercial sectors such as regional and mainline. When it comes to pay, private flight attendants' pay is comparable to a mainline flight attendant. You would think that it might be higher because of the type of clientele that they're flying, but it's not. It's pretty comparable to a mainline flight attendant. And keep in mind, once I get to that episode and we do the math on what a mainline flight attendant makes, you can make, as low as you want to go. You can go as low as you want to go when it comes to pay, but you can make up to $90,000, $100,000 a year at a mainline carrier when you were at max pay and working premium trips. And I'll break that all down you too. And that takes some time to get there. Most flight attendants hover between the $40,000 mark up to like the $75,000 mark, depending on seniority and the types of trips they like to work. And again, I'll break that all down to you in another episode. But when it comes to pay for a private flight attendant, they typically hover somewhere between like the average US median income, which is like, I think like $55,000 a year, something like that. Some private carriers make a little less. Again, this is all contingent upon exactly who you work for, because they don't have to be streamlined with any mainline or regional carrier. They don't have to be streamlined with the commercial sector because they're privately owned. So they can pretty much pay whatever they want to pay, as low as minimum wage or as high as, hey, they're just, being super generous. But from what I understand and from what I gathered from speaking with private flight attendants, you typically fall within that $50-ish thousand range a year. But keep in mind, you don't get flight benefits. And so if you love to travel and you want to take your family somewhere, you guys want to travel, you know, you will kind of be paying for that out of pocket. But, you know, maybe your spouse or partner, you know, has a great income as well, and you guys can afford that. So it might not be a big factor for you. So that is pretty much all I have for you guys as it pertains to the private sector. Again, there is commercial regional, commercial mainline, private, and then in the next episode we will talk about charter. The charter world is really, really cool, and that's where you get to work for companies like Omni and you fly military and things like that. Is Omni still around? I don't know if Omni's still around, but there's some other ones and I'll list them in the next video for you. But if you're interested in working in the private sector, you want to look at companies like Millionaire and NetJets. I think NetJets is based out of like Ohio or something like that. So look into those private Signature is another one. I'm sure there's more, but those are the predominant ones that I see the most. So yeah, look into it. It might be a good fit for you. You know, maybe you just want to be a flight attendant and you want to stay in base, and there's a private company that is in the town that you live in. So you never know. Again, if you work for a regional carrier, a mainline carrier, a private carrier, or a charter, whatever works for you. Okay, there are pros and cons to them all, honey. It is not all roses and green grass on the other side. So do what works for you, okay? Like, comment, and share, subscribe, most importantly, and don't forget to check out the next video all about charter. And I will see you guys in the next episode. Bye.